Hello everybody, it's Hater. Welcome back to another Destiny 2 build video. And today, I want to bring your guys' attention to the Unforgiven SMG that comes from the Duality Dungeon. You might be wondering, why this SMG? Don't you preach the Callous mini tool, Hater? You've been talking about it for the past 3 solar videos. And to answer that, yes, I know. I do in fact preach the Callous mini tool with incandescent on it. However, I have only released solar builds throughout the entirety of this season. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Solar 3.0 is very strong out the gate in my opinion, but I wanted to shake things up a little bit and talk about this SMG. Because if you're like me, you're farming the Duality Dungeon over and over and over again in hopes of getting your perfect god rolls, or maybe you're farming the master version for the new artifice gear. Either way, this gun is going to fall into your hands one way or another. And instead of dismantling it on site, I want to talk about how you could further enhance your void builds by using it. Not only is it an aggressive frame SMG, but it is a void aggressive frame SMG, the only one of its class that is obtainable right now, since the title SMG from Guardian Games is no longer farmable. However, unlike the title SMG, the Unforgiven happens to have one-of-a-kind god rolls on it that just make it far superior. So shout out to all the people who sat there and farmed Guardian Games over and over again for their perfect title. The Unforgiven literally does everything but better. Looking at the left column, you'll notice immediately that this gun can roll Demolitionist. Demolitionist is going to give us 10% of our grenade energy back every time we get a kill with it. With Void subclasses being so heavily grenade focused, it is the perfect perk to make a build around. But if that wasn't enough to catch your attention, if you look in the right column, you have 4 damage perks like Adrenaline Junkie, Frenzy, Golden Tricorn, and Rampage to fit any kind of perfect god roll that you enjoy. Adrenaline Junkie to gain weapon damage on grenade kills, Frenzy for constant bonus damage and weapon stats, Rampage for stackable weapon damage, and then the one I'm most interested in rolling, Golden Tricorn. If you're not familiar with Golden Tricorn, this perk came out around when Grasp of Avarice was released with the 30th anniversary. When you get a kill with a weapon with this perk on it, it's going to give it 15% weapon damage for 7 seconds. The extra kicker though is that if you get a kill with your powered melee or powered grenade that matches your subclass type, it skyrockets that 15% damage increase all the way up to 50% for 10 seconds. For a damage bonus like that when we're using Demolitionist and Void in our build, this is going to make the weapon an absolute beast when it comes to mobbing. So for now, when it comes to the build itself, let's keep that 50% damage bonus in the back of our head and use it as a foundation for everything moving forward. For starters, this build is going to be perfectly flexible amongst all 3 Void subclasses. The main synergy we're going to be using across all 3 is the mod and fragment combination of Echo of Starvation, so we gain Devour whenever we pick up Orbs of Power, the artifact mod Radiant Orbs, so Orbs of Power also make us Radiant for 25% weapon damage, Echo of Instability, so grenade kills will also grant our Void weapons volatile rounds, and Font of Might, so matching Elemental Wells will grant us an additional 25% weapon damage to our weapons that match our subclass typing, also stacking with the Radiant buff I mentioned earlier. This altogether, if you remember, since we're using Golden Tricorn, is going to make our Unforgiven have a damage total of 153% weapon damage when all 3 damage perks are active, plus a minor spec, and we're not even including a global debuff into this. This is the exact reason why I wanted to make this video and bring this gun to your guys' attention. With a little bit of thought, the Unforgiven can be one of the most nasty primary weapons you can add to your arsenal. Warlocks, for your guys' subclass, we're going to be using those Vortex grenades. I know they're still a little buggy right now, but they're still the best grenade out there to use. If you don't like them, you can trade it out for something like Axion Bolts, suppressor grenades, scatter grenades. They all have those different options. Child of the Old Gods and Chaos Accelerant are going to be your main aspects. Child of the Old Gods is going to apply that weaken effect, so we have a global debuff. We also gain that grenade and melee energy because it's a healing rift. Chaos Accelerant, we overcharge those grenades. Vortex, Axion, Scatters, Magnetic, all of them are going to deal more damage and allow us to have an easier time to proc Echo of Instability. For my Warlock personally, I like running Echo of Expulsion alongside Starvation and Instability. Expulsion adds that little extra oomph I like to have with my abilities because we don't have Bloom anymore. But if you want to trade it out for something else, you could use whatever you want. Undermining's a great option. Gives you that extra weaken effect on top of Child of the Old Gods. Persistence is also a great option. Increases the overall duration of Devour, so you have more leeway with proccing it. Or you can even add Echo of Remnants for overall more duration on your grenades. Titans, we're doing something similar with Warlocks. We're using Offensive Bulwark, so our Overshield is going to give us constant grenade energy. This is going to make it feel much more consistent while using the build, and then Bastion is going to make sure that we gain that Overshield. Just like Warlocks, we're using the exact same 3 fragments as before. Echo of Expulsion, Echo of Instability, and then Echo of Starvation. I can also make note here that if you don't like Offensive Bulwark, maybe because you're using the Heart of Inmost Light exotic chess piece, you could trade it out for Controlled Demolition and play into that explosive Titan fantasy. Lastly, Hunters. This one is where you guys get the most freedom of the bunch because you have more fragment slots than the other two. Also, you have many more exotics to pair and make your foundation with this build. Exotics like Wormhusk Crown, Graviton Forfeit, Omnioculus, Star Eater Scales, and the fan favorite Orpheus Rig. All of these are options that are going to further enhance your build. For the aspects, Vanishing Step, invisibility every time you dodge. Stylish Executioner, it's going to make you invisible every time you kill something with your volatile rounds or whenever you weaken something / suppress them. Just like the other two characters, we're using Expulsion, Instability, Starvation, but then we have an extra slot from our aspects. This is where I like to add Persistence into the picture because we have Invisibility and Devour at the same time in this class. Again, my build doesn't have to be picture perfect to yours. This is just recommendations on what I like to run. Circling back to my Warlock though, let's talk about armor. We're gonna need a few things. We're gonna need at least 3 pieces of our armor solar. I recommend it be your boots, your bond, and your helmet. And then 1 extra piece of armor arc. This is gonna be your chest piece. Starting off over at my helmet, I'm personally using Nezarec Sin. Its exotic perk, Abyssal Extractors, is going to give us that ability energy to all of our abilities, including super, when we get kills with anything void. This is going to be a perfect synergy with the Unforgiven. If I didn't want to use this though, I could use something else like Verity's Brow and dip even harder into the Void Grenade fantasy. For the mods though, starting on the right, we're using Well of Life. Since we're not able to use classy restoration inside of this build, Well of Life on top of really high resilience is going to give us that extra survivability that we need. It's going to give us constant healing whenever we pick up a solar elemental well. Since we're using expulsion, volatile rounds, or any kind of explosive weapon in our build, this should be pretty easy to create. But since we are using Orbs of Power in our build, we're going to have to use mods in our helmet to create Orbs of Power. Kinetic Siphon and Harmonic Siphon are the best options. I like using Kinetic Siphon since I'm using Wither Horde, but if I don't use my Wither Horde and I don't really have a kinetic weapon to create Orbs of Power with, then I'll just swap it out for an Ashes to Assets. This is going to give me even more super energy on top of the already huge amount we're gaining from Nezarec Sin. Moving down to the arms, this is your free piece of armor that you could have at any element of your choosing. Something that you could do though is make its energy stasis and use the mod Grenade Kickstart. Grenade Kickstart is going to give us grenade energy back every time we throw our grenade. In such a grenade heavy focused build, this is going to be a great addition and make the build feel even better. At the end though, we are using an elemental ordnance. Defeating enemies with our grenade is going to spawn a void elemental well. This is pretty self-explanatory. It's a resource we can use to gain even more energy to all of our abilities. Moving on down to the chest piece, this is the armor piece I recommend you have arc. That is because we're using a arc resistance on top of Armor of the Dying Star. If you don't have your chest piece as arc this season, this is the reason why you do it. Armor of the Dying Star, artifact mod that reduces incoming solar and void damage at the same time. Pair that with an arc resistance, you are now resisting all 3 damage typings at the exact same time. And then of course, over at the end, we're using Font of Might as I explained earlier. Picking up a Void Elemental Well from our Elemental Ordnance is going to give us 25% weapon damage to our Unforgiven or any other Void weapon we're using in this build. Moving down to the boots, this is the second armor piece I recommend that you have solar, because we're using Explosive Wellmaker. Remember, we talked about that we need a solar elemental well for our Well of Life. This is how we're doing it. Explosive damage in general, this could be our expulsion, our grenades, volatile rounds, or even our Wither Horde puddle. It's going to create that solar elemental well we need. Then for added flavor, we're using an innervation in this build because of Orbs of Power. Since we already gained Devour from picking up Orbs of Power, we're not using recuperation. This is going to reduce the cooldown of our grenades every single time we pick up an Orb of Power. Overall, fitting really nice with the theme of this build. Finally though, moving down to the class item, this is the final piece of armor we have as solar. As we talked about earlier, Radiant Orbs. Picking up those Orbs of Power is going to make us Radiant. That's going to be the main star of the show. But the reason that we have our Bond Solar is for Bountiful Wells. Not only is it going to be a very cheap mod to fit in this slot along with Radiant Orbs, but it's going to double up every well mod that we have that creates elemental wells. So the Elemental Ordnance and Explosive Wellmaker we're using in this build is going to create 2 wells each instead of 1. This is mostly just a quality of life mod that I prefer using. You could easily change it out for something else. Maybe you want your Unforgiven to create elemental wells whenever you get kills with it. Elemental Armaments is going to do that. Or you can even get more grenade energy by using Well of Ordnance. Either way though, guys, that is going to be the build for today's video. As always, if you guys enjoy the kind of builds that I put out, then the best way to support the channel is by giving the video a like and subscribing so you'll be up to date whenever a new build video comes out. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments, or you can come ask me over at my Twitch, which will be down in the description. I stream every single day at 7 p.m. Eastern, and that's where I'll be playing pretty much any game of my choosing with my friends or by myself. Overall though, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to catch you in the next one. Bye bye.